This material might look amazing, but students do struggle to make it. And last month, Mike Acosta gave me the chance to help the students at the University of Staffordshire with a lecture that was both theory and practice. And today, you're going to see that same lecture, but only the first part, the theory, of how to create roof tiles materials in Substance Designer, and what's the logic behind it. But next week, you will get the full-length tutorial of how to create this same pattern inside Substance Designer. But for the moment, let's get started with theory. So I've been working in the last 5 years as a material artist, and I've specialized in creating textures inside Substance Designer. And I've been working in this portfolio I have and all my skills as a self-taught artist. I went to graphic design school. For those who don't know me, I kind of dropped that to learn material art because in my country there was no university that actually teach that. So I had to learn it from other professionals and mentors that I start to meet throughout my career. Now, when we're talking about materials, there's a lot of materials to, let's say, start as a student. And I think that roof tiles are one of the best materials to kind of like go on leveling your material skills. And it's also a very interesting material because at the end, if you try to take it to a more advanced and professional level, as the one we're going to be seeing right now, it needs a combined series of elements and decision making that we're going to look. So before you think this is just going to be a presentation of me pulling pictures all around, no, we're just going to go also inside Substance Designer. We are going to see about how I built this material, and I'm also going to show you a little secret of something I haven't shown yet, that is an obsidian material I'm working on, and how to create procedural stone shapes in Substance Designer. So there's going to be also a technical part for this. Yeah, so let's get started. Today we're going to work with building roof tiles as a professional material artist, and roof tiles might be that kind of material that if you go for on one direction, it might get really easy, but if you go to something more like this, it might get hard to achieve an interesting result. Now, I haven't posted this material yet, but I will soon with all the presentations I'm hoping to get ready. So one of the biggest secrets when creating tile patterns, yes, especially for roof tiles, is splitting, yes, your pattern into smaller pieces. What I see a lot of students doing inside Substance Designer is trying to make everything together. They try to make a procedural shape out of 5 nodes and be that the nodes that they need. You need to understand something. You need to learn first how to get results, then you learn how to optimize them. You don't need to look smart, you need to get the job done with the quality needed that let's say your client or studio is asking for, yeah, and in the time that they need it, because that's most importantly. Something most studios and people can't get back is time. They can't get back money, they can't get back a lot of things, but time is something that once it's gone, it's gone. So you need to focus also on that. I'm not telling you to rush, I'm telling you to work smart. And in this case, yes, being able to break one single tile into small pieces to have more control over it is going to make your work easier, more organized, and at the same time it will allow you to have better shapes in your roof tiles. Yeah, and this is the first secret. It doesn't just hold to this specific type of roof tiles that you see here in this render. It's part of any kind of roof tiles. You need to start by making one tile. Yes, then from that system that you created one time, you can break it down into severals. Yes, and there you start adding variation. Yeah, in this case, I didn't add much variation. As you can see, it's just the plain shape as it shows in the screenshot, but later we're going to see inside Substance Designer what did I do to make this a little bit more different. Now, following this rule, which is something I feel you should take in consideration for every material you make, that is breaking everything into steps, yeah, is combine 2 patterns to make it tile as it should. Some patterns cannot be done with just one tile generator, and that's something that I see in a lot of students. They just try to get one tile generator, and with that tile generator or tile sampler try to get the pattern done. Sometimes you need an extra step, and that extra step might seem repetitive. In this case, what I do is from the initial pattern I get from my tile generator, I duplicate it with a transform 2D, I shift it to the darker areas, and then I blend them with a max lighten. Yeah, don't worry about the technical details right now. We are seeing the theory behind the decision making. We're gonna go into the theory, yes, when we get to Substance Design. So again, something I said before, if you try to do everything in one single node with 2 nodes, when you don't even know how to get it right by not limiting yourself, what's going to happen is that you're not going to get the result you need. So split the problem into different pieces. Remember that you have more tools than just one node. Yes, the tile generator is to create create patterns, but it's not the only tool you can use to make patterns. Yes, transforming and blending is also something super important about the process. So another secret to make these roof tiles not only be and look professional but also feel realistic is understanding and controlling the surface detail to avoid the unwanted noise. When you're creating realistic details, it might happen to a lot of you that sometimes your details are too strong, they're too noisy, maybe your shapes are right, but you add some surface detail and it feels like you throw sand on top of it. There's just pure image noise and it feels weird. So you have to control the intensity of these things, and you also should think about 3 crucial questions I always ask myself when I'm looking to make a material, which is, what are the initial properties of this surface? The surface you're working on, what is it? How was it made? And what will make this surface change? So let's go back a little bit. Yes, the main screenshot here. This is a roof tile and it has wood planks below, and I missed some details, like for example the wood aging. But let's talk a little bit about the roof tiles itself. They are in the top of the roof. When they are made by human beings, they have a specific let's say texture, they have specific properties, but with time and weather, yes, they start to erode and they start to shift. The color, the feeling, the texture, they start to break. So there's something in there that is changing them, and we need to take all of those things into consideration. Yes, that takes you to question 2. What changes or affects these properties? And the answer is the environmental conditions. Remember that you're making surfaces for environments. Every environment has conditions. Those conditions are not only set to the natural set of the environment, like let's say if you have a village near a rift that is in front of the sea, the conditions are going to be one. But if then you add, I don't know, a war in the middle, then the walls will not only be affected by the wind and salt of the water, but also by the bullets being shot, the blood, and many other things. So there's a lot of things about the story of the environment, the setting of the environment, that will have an effect on your material. And as a material artist, your job to find what are those conditions, what are those effects that will change your material into something more aligned to the story that you want to tell. Yeah, and the final, question is, how does it change? Every material starts by being pristine, by being perfect, and then with erosion, time, and many other conditions, it starts to change. So we need to see, or we need to build the material, yes, as something that is really in really well conditions, super pristine, and then we start damaging step by step till it looks like it should look like after the story that we want to tell. And giving them an order, yes, is super important. That's why I'm telling you, start with something that is pristine, and when you have done the part that feels pristine of the material, then you can move on to the other area where you start adding, okay, let's add some cracks, let's add some holes, yes, let's add sunburns to it. Those details are amazing, but they need to make sense. So you need to guide them forward. So you also, yes, for this kind of materials, need to keep up with something I call the golden rule of 3. I learned this from an old mentor. He's a good friend as well. He taught me, I think he's now lead at Ubisoft Massive. He's an amazing artist and he's the owner of Dynasty. He's Dynasty, basically, Jeremy. And he taught me this rule of 3, which I call the golden rule of 3 because I think it's amazing. And basically, this rule of 3 tells you that in order to keep visual interest, you need at least 3 elements that are connected between each other that will generate a sense of story. They bring sense to your texture, they bring sense to your work, they bring sense to the art that you're creating. So for example, I forgot to maybe add the concept of this material, but this is an old roof tile of an old abandoned house. And roof tiles are not just landing or floating in the air, they are on top of something. Showing the wood planks by removing some of them gives you the effect that, okay, there's something going behind. The roof tiles are the main element of the material, yes, that is what we are aiming to create, and the leaves and the moss are the elements that are added after with the time and story. Yeah, so there's these 3 elements, yes, that is aligned around the height and normal creation that we are adding. After that, we can add more details, yes, like the sunburns and so on. Those are details, but the moss, the roof tiles, and the wood planks, those are elements. Those are elements that compose the material, and if you remove some of them, you're going to lose value and you're going to lose part of the story that you want to tell. So always remember and try to have something to remember. If you're making one material, it doesn't matter how simple it can be, add a rule of 3. Add 3 elements that work together in the environment that you want to put in to make up the story and make it more visually interesting. Now, This is the part I lately realized. If you're following me on LinkedIn, which is where I constantly post all the time, it's like my favorite platform right now. This is the topic that I feel a lot of students struggle a lot with, and it's base color. And I'm gonna stop this for a moment, and I'm just gonna show you something in my Substance Designer graph. So I'm gonna go there. Yeah, you can see it. As you can see, this is my graph. Yes, I do have some things hanging here. These are the things that I like and I later share for content. And well, I have to do the graphic designs and masking and everything, so I usually pull them around in my graph right now. But you can see this is my height creation, and this is, yes, my base color. So what usually happens when you're trying to learn Substance Designer is that one of the main things you focus on is in height creation. I think that's terrific, because without a proper height and normal map, you're gonna fail to make a really good and interesting, yes, base color. Our interesting material is gonna look really good without the base color, but with the base color, it will feel like an ended job. So you need to focus on creating a good height map, just with good details. But the issue here is that when you go and start working with your base color, what's going to happen is that the workflow changes. Things change. You need to learn something new, and you need to learn more technical aspects of Substance Designer. You need to learn how to combine colors. You need to learn how to use masks. What's the best technique that you can have, the best workflow? You need to build a workflow from zero. So that's where you feel stuck, because it feels like starting from zero when you already felt that you have Substance Designers almost under your hand. So I'm going to go back to the presentation. And here we talk about giving order and shape to your color to achieve higher details. And this is something I don't see in a lot of the students' works, is that they don't give, when they're working on their base colors, they don't give a specific order. They just kind of like start working whatever they have, yes, whatever they want to do first, feel like doing first, and they don't try to shape a color with, let's say, depth. So if I go back to Substance Designer, and I'm going to show you a small trick here. I think, let me just fix. Yeah, so you're gonna see here the reference. Right now, in this node, yes, right at the foliage scan leaves, you see that there's base color, there's a little bit of shape going on, yes, but it still feels a little bit flat. But later, when I keep on, look, now it has that feeling of 3D, even if this is a 2 image with color. Now, this is not something that is just changed with one simple node. This is temperature map. This is done by different elements and, let's say, workflows and tools I have that we're going to be looking at later, yeah, that I take over throughout my process. And one of those is being organized with your graph. So let's say, yes, in this case, I wanted to have, yes, first my roof tiles. Yes, done. I wanted to set up the main color of my roof tiles, and that's super important. The reason this is super important is because the roof tiles are the main element of my material. They are the hero element of my material. So I want to define them before defining the rest, because I want the rest of the elements to attach to this main element. So we started with this first part, and we created the color, yes, adding all the details I just mentioned before. Look how I start with a pristine color, yes, something that is neutral, yes, a little bit of color variation, and then I start adding a little bit of sunburns, more dirt, more damage, yes, stains. So you start with something that looks nice, that it looks simple, then you add color variation, and from that you start building, yes, the damages and extra details that you want to add. But you need to add them with meaning. Adding something with meaning means you're not just adding a grunge map here just because. You're not adding, color variation just because you have to add color variation. You're adding all of these things because there's something you want to transmit to people. You want to say, hey, this has story. Something happened here. What did it happen? In these roof tiles, it can be water for the way that these marks move. Yes, it could be the sun for the way these burns are so strong and dark. Yes, it could be everything you was wanted, but you need to build it based on that. You need to make sense out of the decisions that you are taking. And that's where things get a little bit harder, because that's when you have to take your technical knowledge to build this. So the next one, and this is something that I hope all of students, yes, start to do with materials, yes, and I might go just to my portfolio to give an example. You need to step your steps in context to check that you are on the right path. Yes, this is a render I made before having my base color done. Every time I finish my height map, or while building my height map, I have a doubt, I open Marmoset and I do a quick render like this one, and I look at it and say, is there something that is really bothering me? Is there something that doesn't feel good? Does this look good already? Or should I keep pushing more? Or do I need to push more? Yeah, it all will depend on what I'm looking for. And in your case as students, if you're looking to push yourself more, then there's always going to be more work to get done. Yeah, and you need to keep pushing. So don't use this, yes, just as a tool to say, Does it look good? Use it as a tool to say, what am I missing? What is it working? What is not working? So what you can do, for example, in this situation is you do a quick render, or you don't even render it, you just look at it in Marmoset, and you go back to Substance Designer and say, okay, I don't like how the distribution of the tiles is being made. That's something I generally think about this material. I feel these tiles being missed like this doesn't feel that organic, so I would change it. So usually if I were more, let's say, working for a studio, I would have a lead and I would have someone telling me, what to do and not do it just for myself. I would go back to Substance Designer with Marmoset open and I will start playing with that. And when I get something I kind of like it, I re-export the images that will auto-update in Marmoset and I can see it. Now, it doesn't need to be Marmoset. I use Marmoset because I'm used to it and I have already a setup, but you can do it in Unreal Engine as well. Now, I talk about context in here, and context is super important for a material. When we work, yes, with Substance Designer, and we create materials, sometimes we forget that we are making materials, yes, to be used in an environment, especially if you're working in portfolio. So we fall for the trap of doing, these kinds of renders that I used to have a lot, which are these kind of like sphere renders and only these plane renders that you see here. And that's all we do. And I see this in a lot of students. And I need you to understand something super important. All the work that you have put into Substance Designer goes down the toilet the moment you stop caring about your presentation. Your presentation is not but the most part of your, let's say, artwork when it comes to your portfolio. If you want to have an attractive portfolio for a studio you want to work on, you need to show that you care for the work that you're doing. And the presentation, that's how much you care. That's how much you like what you do. That's you saying, this is what I am. This is what I want to do. This is my offer. And then studios will choose who they hire or not. But it's important that you start showing materials in context. What would be materials in context? Materials in context would be something like this. For this project, which has already 1 year, yes, I made the full wall in Substance Designer, and I wanted to show my material in a more interesting way than just, cylinder or a sphere. So I set up a small scene around it. And the reason I set a small scene around this is because I wanted to show how did my material work in an environment, in a setting, in a place where the material is part of the story. Yes, and it feels cohesive to what I'm doing, besides being just something that looks nice. So adding a context or showing your material in context will always help you get those things done and transmit that feeling that your work is ready to be used in a place that the studio will use it. In this case, for example, I just tried to do something different. I felt very creative and I went for concrete. A concrete gallery. I made a lot of concrete materials and I wanted to play with composition, Unreal Engine and cinematics. So voila, this is what I made. But again, I'm showing my material skills with other skills as well while creating some of these shots, which, to be honest, I kind of phantom them a lot. I haven't seen this in a while. So let's go back to the presentation because we're almost done with it and we're gonna go with Substance Designer. So remember, always test your steps, especially if you have doubts. If you have doubts, then you need to know, I'm doubting. Let's go to make a quick render. Let's see how it looks as I wanted to see in the final render. This allows you to visualize how your final product will be, and that's what you need to go for. So this is the main rule I said at the beginning, and this is exactly what I want you to keep from today, most than anything I just said, is you need to take one step at a time and making sure it's the best step. Something good doesn't come of making it fast. Something good doesn't come of having the best technique, the best notes all together. It comes from dedicating your time and effort and failing and trying again and again until you get it right. So if you want to build a portfolio, don't go for, let's say, a lot of materials in your portfolio. Go for the quality of your artwork, because that's what people is going to be looking for. And I think that's the best thing you can do for yourself to grow. And this is going to take you time, because quality loves time and dedication, but hates speed, because speed doesn't let you make as much mistakes as you would do with more time. Now, I know what you're thinking. Ezequiel, this was just pure theory. It was interesting, but I want to see some designer action. And believe me, I know you want that. So next week, you're gonna see the full-length tutorial on how to create this pattern and maybe some surface details of the roof style. But in order to see it, you might want to subscribe and turn notifications on so you don't miss it next week. Thanks for coming, and I'll see you next time.